guys, so welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. This is going to be the first video in my brand new series I'm starting called Now What? And this is going to focus on how you as the loved one or a family member or a friend of a veteran can support them in different ways, and what you can do to help them in the next steps and whatever they're going through. So this one is, my loved one is coming back home from combat. What can I do? Now what? This is going to be mostly kind of emotional advice and support of how you can be there for them emotionally. And then at the end of this, it'll be a few things that you can do as far as like clerical, like how you can help them be seen by a medical professional or get their disability process started. But the bulk of this video is going to be how you can support them and be there for them more on an emotional level. So this is just my opinion, again, from experience and from speaking with my husband. This is just some things that we think could help make the transition a little bit easier, because if you haven't lived through it, so if your loved one is currently in Iraq or Afghanistan, or they're currently gone and they're going to be coming home from combat, you've never done this before, it can be tricky. It's not an easy transition for either, because you have expectations of what you want life to be like once they get home, and they have expectations of what they would like life to become once they return, but that doesn't always happen how they see it. And there are going to be some things that come up that you or the veteran maybe could not have foreseen happening, and I just think if you can have a better understanding of how they're feeling or maybe what they may be going through, then you can be there for them, and together you can get through it. So first of all, the main thing that you need to do is be there for them. When they get home, if you had plans, if you had work, do anything and everything you can to be there. As soon as they step off of the bus or the plane or however they're arriving home, be there to greet them and let them know you miss them. Make signs, make it a big, huge deal. I never attended anything like this because I did not know my husband when he got back. I met him after he got back. But you know, being there, because when they step off, it's nice to see a familiar face. It's nice to see family. And if a bunch of guys have their family and someone doesn't, it can make it a little bit harder, because that's the first contact they're having. So if you're not there, or if someone doesn't have a loved one or a friend there to greet them, it can make them feel alone. We definitely don't want that. So try everything you can, get as many people who care about this person as possible to be there and greet them, and just love them, support them, and be patient. And what I mean by be patient is they're coming home from a very intense, very stressful situation that you could never imagine. So don't try to, understand what they're feeling, because you're not going to. You can empathize with them and you can try and just be understanding, but you're never going to fully get what they just been through and how much of a change it is to go from there to home. I am going to sprinkle a little bit of stories in here about different people that I've known in my life and how different things have affected them when coming home. I'm not going to say any names or anything for the person's privacy, but these are just stories that I've read online, or like I said, heard through the grapevine, or know personally. So there are many, many stories of guys that come home and the transition is just really hard for them, not just emotionally, but the physical parts of it, because their body and their psyche and everything is used to a certain way of doing things in a combat zone that's not going to happen when you come home. So for example, I have seen and heard of veterans who have been out at different events, concerts, just big gatherings, even church, even just walking around in a public place, and say someone starts up a motorcycle and it can kind of putter a little bit. Well, to us, it's a motorcycle. To someone coming home from combat, that can sound like something that they heard when they were over there, and it can take them back to that place. And this can happen in a number of different ways. You can see the veteran dive down to the side as if they're ducking for cover. They can maybe just flinch, or maybe they just kind of shut down and aren't really saying anything. All of these are signs that that this isn't as easy a transition as you may think it is for them. So be patient. They may not want to get right back into the way things were before they left, and they really shouldn't. They need to process what they've been through, and they need to transition into being whatever it is they are in your family. So I'm going to also reference the movie Thank You for Your Service. It does do a good job of depicting what life is like for veterans coming home from combat. So I will recommend that if you haven't, check that movie out. I'll leave the name again in the description, but it's called Thank You for Your Service. Just came out not that long ago on digital and on DVD, and it's a really good movie. My husband and I both watched it, and it was pretty accurate. Obviously, it didn't get everything perfect, but it is a good generalized depiction of what it can be like. And in that movie, the guy comes home and he has a wife and they have 2 small children, and the little girl is probably 4 or 5, and then they have a little boy who's still a baby, a year or younger. And he comes home, and they're excited that he's home, and he's celebrating with his wife, and then the next day it's like life is normal again. He's home, she's got to go run some errands, she asks him to watch the kids, he's going to go look for a job. It just is like they try and resume life back to normal, and honestly, that isn't always the best. Sometimes, I know you've probably seen movies or heard where people say doing your normal routine can take your mind off of something. So for example, if you're grieving the loss of someone, going back to your job, sometimes that normalcy can be comforting, and it can help you overcome whatever it is that you're going through. But you kind of have to let them steer it and them decide when they're ready. But just going straight back into the way things were before, while it may be good for you and it may be good for them deep down, they may not be ready for that yet. So just be mindful, and you have to really pay attention to not just what they say, but how they're acting. For me, I can tell a lot about how, not just my husband or my family members, but anyone that I know in the military, I can tell what they really are thinking or feeling by the way that they look. Their body language says way more than their mouth ever will. So I can tell if we're in a stressful situation and my husband's getting to the point where we need to walk away, we need to leave and get home and get him out of the situation. He doesn't have to say anything, and I can ask him, are you okay? Are you ready to leave? And he can say, oh no, I'm fine. And I can just tell. So you know your loved one better than anyone. So you should be able to kind of read that body language. And even if they're telling you all the right things, and even if they're saying, I'm okay, like everything's fine, don't worry about me, you know them, and you're going to be the one that's going to keep them honest more than they are, because these guys are tough. These men and women are tough, and they don't want to admit any weakness or that they need help or that they're struggling with anything. So you're gonna have to just pay attention to the cues and to their body language. So what I was saying is, big giant social events maybe aren't the best thing to take them to, and just jumping back into your normal day-to-day life, while again it may be helpful and it might be good for some families, for others it may not work like that. And I just have some notes. So if you see me look to the side, I'm just looking over my notes. Let them share what they want to share. In other words, I personally, and my husband would agree, don't think that you should start grilling them as soon as they get home and start asking them, what did you do? What was it like? What was this like? Because remember, they're trying to transition, so they're not necessarily leaving that behind or trying to erase it from their memory. But if they're trying to transition to being home again, and you keep asking them about that, it's not really letting them transition properly. And not to mention, a lot of times there's just some things that they don't want to share, or they're not going to share. Again, referencing the movie Thank You for Your Service. In that movie, she says to her husband, I want to know everything. There's nothing that I can't handle.
You never told me you were a hero. Don't spare me the details. I can take anything but quiet.
And while that may be true for some, and for example, in our case, there's some things that my husband has never told me, and there's some things that I will never ask. And that's just the way it is. So just be willing to listen and talk, and don't be afraid to ask questions, but be mindful of those questions. And again, this is where you really have to pay attention to their body language. And if you're talking about it and you can see them start to tense up or get to a not so good place, just take a break and steer the conversation in a different direction. Another thing is, in the movie, she starts just screaming at him because he is shutting her out.
I thought you were fine. You're lying to me. I found your VA questionnaire. Everything's a lie. You're sick, and I can't do anything if you don't talk to me, Adam.
I have to be sick or I can't get my benefits.
So you don't want to die? It was multiple choice, and you said you wanted to die. Was that a lie? Adam.
I don't know.
Which is common. When they're transitioning, you can't begin to imagine all the different things that are going through their head and just how hard it is, because this is the way that I think of it. Again, this is just my opinion. No one has said this to me. This is just what I think it would be like. But basically, they feel like they're coming home from something where they're literally making a difference in people's lives every day. They're saving lives. They're changing lives. They're heroes. And they come home and they feel like, okay, now what? Like, for example, if somebody was a retail manager or you know, a groundskeeper somewhere, and they just got back from combat and they resumed their old job. Well, now that job doesn't seem to have the same meaning as it did before, because they've done something that's made a huge impact on thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives. And so it's a hard transition. They start to feel like their life has no real purpose anymore, like that they've done what they were put here to do, and now they're just kind of going through the motions. I obviously don't think that. I don't agree with that. I think that what they do is always remembered and respected, and they're always a hero, whether they're actively serving or they're retired or they're out. I don't think they should feel that way, but in reality it does happen. So don't be afraid to express concerns. If you think your loved one is having a harder time, and maybe giving them space and giving them time to just come around on their own isn't gonna work, and it's a little more intense than that, don't be afraid to either call their unit if they're still in, because they can offer some type of counseling, or call your local VA and try and get them in to see someone. Anyone can help. It doesn't have to be through the VA, but a lot of times that is the best place, because these people deal with veterans on a daily basis, so they can really understand and empathize what the veteran is going through, as opposed to a civilian doctor who doesn't deal with people coming home from combat. It's not going to be the same. So don't be afraid to voice concerns and to ask for help when it's necessary for your veteran, because they're not always going to speak up and ask for help or ask for space, or, you know, a lot of times they're just going to go with the flow and just keep any issues to themselves. And so it's really up to you to just pay attention. Again, watch their body language. Don't get angry with them for shutting you out. And again, that's in the movie, she's like screaming at him. And I remember looking at my husband and being like, this is really making me angry. I can't believe she is screaming at him and getting mad at him because he doesn't want to share something with her right now. Again, that may be different for your family. Maybe he comes home or she comes home and they tell you everything, and that's fine if they're comfortable with that. But don't pressure them to say or to do or to tell anything that they're not ready to, because that can really damage the progress that they've made in transitioning. I would also suggest to find support groups, or at least even within your unit and within his friends, get together with other military families, especially, like I said, ones that were in the same unit that deployed with him, because then you can all kind of see how's everybody doing. They can catch up and they can talk to each other, because a lot of times veterans are going to open up easier to other veterans, especially veterans that they served with in a combat zone. So keeping his close knit of friends or her close knit of friends and their families and getting together and socializing with other combat families will help, because again, you can relate. If, you know, veteran A and veteran B are kind of shutting down and they're not really talking to their family, getting together in a big group, maybe veteran A and veteran B start to talk to each other and they start to work through a lot of stuff that they couldn't share with their families. And maybe veteran A family and veteran B family are able to talk to each other and say, hey, he's doing the same thing, or he's not telling me these things, and they can relate. And with more minds and the what's the word I'm looking for? With more heads in, you can come up with more ideas and you can have an easier time. So I hope that makes sense. But I think having a support group, not necessarily like a specific support group that's like, you know, a group that you go to at a public location, but just with your friends. Have one night a month where you get together with his friends and their families, and you just hang out and try to make it a little bit easier for them to transition. And then again, just loving them and being supportive of them. Let them know you're happy they're home, you appreciate them. Try not to nag too much if you ask them to do something and they don't do it right away. Just remember, their mind is in a totally different place, and they're trying to bring their mind to where their body is here in the present, but it isn't always that easy. So you nagging or getting angry or feeling like they're shutting you out and letting that create a distance between you is only going to make it worse. So definitely just try to be loving and supportive. Don't be afraid to talk to your veteran about things that are bothering you, but you know them better than anyone, and so you know when it's time to walk away, you know when you need to just give them some space or let them clear their head, and you know when you need to ask someone to step in and help. So those are all really very generalized. I mean, it's very vague advice, but I'm hoping that this advice can speak to the right person and maybe change the way you approach your veteran once they come home, because that movie shows, I believe it's 3 or 4 different stories, essentially. It's the main character who already has a family. It is another guy that comes home that has a wife, and she is now pregnant once he gets home. And then another one who comes home. And so let me pause right here. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen this movie, thank you for your service. Skip this last part of the movie because I'm going to be talking about the different guys in there and how this relates to my advice. So spoiler alert coming right now. So the third character in the movie is a gentleman that comes home, and unfortunately he comes home to his wife or his fiance and her child just up and left. This happens a lot where veterans' girlfriends or wives or significant others will leave while they're gone, and unfortunately there's not really much that they can do to prevent that from happening, but it does happen. I'm sorry if you could hear my laundry in the background. I'm hoping the mic isn't picking it up too badly. But anyways, he comes home and she's gone, and she won't tell him anything. She won't talk to him, and she cleared out his bank account in the movie. So he literally now has nothing. His power is off. His home is empty. There's an eviction notice on the door because she hasn't paid rent or whatever on their home. And now the person that he loved and her child, who he had basically raised as his own, are gone. So he has come home from this really hard situation to start the transition into regular life, but now has to do it alone because she's not there. And unfortunately in the movie, nobody really sees the warning signs. And so unfortunately, and this might be, so warning, if you are triggered by suicide or talks of it, then skip this part as well. But that's what ends up happening in the movie, is he ends up taking his own life. And it was so heartbreaking in the movie because it happens so much in real life, and it's because people were afraid to step up and ask for help for a loved one when they need it. Shutting them down, turning your back on them, getting angry with them, that just makes it worse. So all I can say is love them. If you guys can't figure out a way to transition together, then go and get a counselor, get a family counselor. Like I said, speak with other families, find out how they're doing. What are they doing to make the transition easier? You're only going to find what works for you by trial and error and by talking. And just like with any marriage or any relationship, you know, it's a give and take. And this is where your veteran is needing you to stand up and be the rock, be understanding, be the support, so that he can transition back into being that for you. So I guess my best advice is don't set your expectations too high for what life should be like once they're home, and don't put too much pressure on them. And just be mindful. You have to give them space, but don't give them too much space. You know what I mean? Talk to them as much as they want to talk, but don't push them to talk if they're not ready to. Ask for help if they need it, but don't overstep your bounds and make them feel like you don't trust them or that you're afraid of them. You just have to communicate. I mean, that's really all there is to it. And again, it's up to you to pay attention. You know this person better than anybody else does. So you know cues to look out for, you know how they were before they went and how they are now. They're probably going to be different. So don't take that as a sign that something is wrong in your relationship or something is wrong with your loved one because they're different. It's gonna be different. You know what I mean? Life will never go back to normal because whose life is normal? But because they're different now. This has changed them. They're still the person you love and married, but there are things that are going to be different about them, and you have to learn and grow with them. We're always changing. Everybody is, whether you're in the military or not. Everyone's always changing and growing and developing new skills and learning new things about themselves. So to stay a strong, healthy relationship and to stay a strong, healthy couple, you have to grow together. So just be mindful, be open, be respectful, and just love them and support them. That's really all you can do. As far as clerically, medically, whatever the word is, like what you can do to help them get benefits or get seen, like I've said, immediately contact a VA and speak with a patient advocate, and they can get you enrolled in all the correct programs. I am not 100% certain, but I am like 85% sure that when you come home from combat, there is access to VA healthcare to some degree. What that degree is varies from state to state, but the way you can find out the fastest is by calling or by going online to look up for your area what they have access to. But definitely call if they're going to be filing any type of disability claim or any medical claims through the VA. You need to get that started immediately. I am going to have in my next video more of the information on how to file for disability. So that's the second video in the Now What series, is they're discharging, or now what, and I'm going to talk about all of the disability parts of it and how to get your benefits. So I'll have all of the contact information in this video coming up next. But just know you can call your local VA, speak to a patient advocate, or go online to get all this information as well. So again, I hope that this helped someone, or at least maybe can help you in the future when you're dealing with this with your loved one. If you have any questions or any advice that you think would help someone when they're helping their loved one transition from combat to home, please feel free to comment it below. Again, thank you for your service, and please pass this on to the veteran if you yourself are not the veteran. But I thank you guys for your service. Thank you for watching, and if you have any video ideas or any personal one-on-one questions, you can email the email in the link below, and be sure to share this with others who you think may benefit from this information. Remember, again, this is just my opinion from my experience. None of this is medical or marriage or any type of advice that I have been certified in. Just my opinion. But it is from experience, and it's what works. It's what worked for my family. Doesn't mean that it will work for you. You kind of have to cater all of this to fit your family. But generally speaking, I believe this advice is general enough that it should be able to help a wide range of people. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.